His voice was dripping with false disappointment. "Riley," he said, his shadow falling over my monitor. "What did we say about email?" I had just solved a critical issue for our biggest client, a notoriously tech-averse CEO. The solution took me 2 days of careful work, untangling a mess his new system had created. Her reply was a simple one-liner, a quick message of gratitude that represented millions of dollars in continued business. I was typing back, "You're welcome," when he appeared. He didn't wait for an answer. He just gestured toward his office with a flick of his head. The walk was short, but the air grew heavy with his petty satisfaction. He closed the door behind us, the click of the latch echoing like a final judgment. He sat behind his oversized desk, leaning forward with his hands clasped. His eyes, which were usually empty, now gleamed with a strange victory. "From now on," he began, his voice low and deliberate, "you will use the new software for all client communication. No more emails, no more calls unless they are logged first. If it is not in the software, it did not happen. Am I clear?" My name is Riley, and for 10 years I was a senior client manager. My entire career was built on a simple principle: do good work, and it will speak for itself. I believed in solving problems, not just closing tickets. I believed in building relationships based on trust, not on metrics from a spreadsheet. This philosophy is how I landed and kept our company's biggest account. It's how I earned the trust of executives who wouldn't give most people the time of day. My work was meticulous, patient, and always focused on the client's actual needs. It provided a stable, comfortable life for my husband and me, a life built on competence and quiet excellence. For the past few months, however, my manager had become obsessed with a new project management software. It was his pet project, a clunky, counterintuitive nightmare that he'd championed to his own bosses. He saw it as his golden ticket to a promotion, a way to prove he was an innovator. Our clients despised it. It was confusing, inefficient, and created more problems than it solved. I knew this because they told me, often in frustrated phone calls after they'd given up trying to navigate the system. My job had become a delicate balancing act, protecting my clients from the very tool meant to help them. Every day was a low-grade battle. He would send out company-wide emails praising the software's efficiency gains, attaching charts with meaningless data. I would spend my day on the phone, walking a client through a problem the software had caused, and then quietly fixing it myself. I saw my reliance on old-fashioned methods, like direct email and phone calls, as a commitment to my clients. He saw it as a personal insult, a direct challenge to his authority and his grand vision. He couldn't grasp that a relationship worth millions couldn't be managed through a series of drop-down menus and status updates. My fatal flaw was my trust in the system. I followed his foolish rules as best I could because I thought that was what a good employee did. I believed that my results, the continued satisfaction of our most important client, would eventually prove my methods were correct. I thought competence would win. But standing in his office, I saw he wasn't interested in competence. He was interested in control. He didn't care that I had just saved a critical account. He only cared that I had done it outside of his designated playground. He was cutting off my greatest strength, my ability to communicate directly and build trust. He was severing the lifelines to the very people I was hired to support. He thought he was putting me in my place, forcing me to comply with his broken system. The decree wasn't a management strategy. It was an act of sabotage, aimed directly at me. I walked back to my desk and sat down, the screen still showing the client's thank you note. His words echoed in my head. If it is not in the software, it did not happen. He believed his title gave him all the answers. He believed his metrics told the whole story. He had no idea about the strength of the relationships I had spent years building. He had no idea that trust, once earned, is a powerful thing. He thought he was taking away my tools. He was wrong. He had just given me a reason to build my own. He had just given me a reason to build my own tools, and my mind, which was usually so orderly, raced with possibilities. For a brief moment, a hot flash of anger surged through me. It was the kind of fury that makes you want to shout, to throw open the door and list every single reason why his plan was idiotic, and destined to fail in front of the entire office. I wanted to tell him that relationships are not built on software tickets, and that trust is not a trackable metric. I wanted to explain that his obsession with control was going to cost this company its most valuable asset. But as I looked at his smug, self-satisfied face, the anger didn't explode. It cooled, condensing into something hard, clear, and incredibly sharp. He hadn't just given me an order, he'd given me a weapon. He had created a rule so rigid, so profoundly stupid, that it couldn't possibly survive contact with reality. His arrogance was the flaw in his own system, and he was proudly handing me the key to its destruction. I saw the entire path forward with perfect clarity. In that instant, I knew I wasn't going to fight it. I wasn't going to argue or plead my case. I was going to do exactly what he said. I was going to follow his new rule perfectly, meticulously, and without a single deviation. I took a slow, deliberate breath, letting the last of the heat drain away, replaced by a calm, settled focus. I met his gaze, holding it just long enough for him to see my complete composure. With an even, professional voice, I said, "Crystal clear." I turned without another word and walked out of his office, closing the door softly behind me. The chaos that had been churning in my mind settled into a single, focused point. Every step back to my desk felt solid and purposeful. He thought he had won. He thought he had finally cornered the employee who refused to fit neatly into his spreadsheets. He had no idea what he had just unleashed. He had mistaken my patience for weakness and my quiet competence for an unwillingness to fight. He didn't understand that I avoid conflict not because I am afraid of it, but because it is usually inefficient. Now, however, the most efficient path forward was through a conflict of his own making. My plan was simple. In fact, it was so simple he would never see it coming. It was a strategy I had read about but never had a reason to use: malicious compliance. I would comply with his every demand, so precisely and so thoroughly that the system would inevitably collapse under the weight of its own absurdity. My greatest asset in this endeavor wasn't just my skill or my experience. It was my relationship with our biggest client, Ms. Vance. I have worked with her personally for 5 years, navigating her through product launches, solving technical crises, and even remembering the name of her dog. Our professional relationship was built on a foundation of mutual respect and brutal efficiency. I know that Ms. Vance values directness above all else. She has no time for bureaucratic nonsense or convoluted processes. If she has a problem, she wants to talk to the person who can fix it, and she wants it fixed immediately. This is why our relationship works. I am that person for her. More importantly, I know that she has our chief executive officer's personal cell phone number, and she is not afraid to use it. They've known each other for decades. She is not just a client. She is a cornerstone of our company's reputation and financial stability. My manager, in his arrogant climb up the corporate ladder, knew none of this. To him, she was just a name on an account list, a data point in his monthly reports. So I wouldn't have to do much. I just had to be patient and wait. I knew, with absolute certainty, that the moment would come. Ms. Vance would have an urgent, last-minute request that required a quick, decisive phone call. It was the exact kind of high-stakes, rapid-fire interaction that our relationship was built for, and the exact kind of interaction the new software made impossible. When that moment arrived, I would simply follow my manager's order to the absolute letter. I would not call her. I would not send a quick email. I would log her urgent need into the clunky software, assign it a priority level based on his rigid criteria, and wait for the system to process it. I would trap her, our most important client, in his bureaucratic nightmare. And when she inevitably became furious at the delay and the lack of communication, I would calmly explain the new protocol. I would use his own words to build the cage. I would show her the digital paper trail, proving I had followed every single one of his ridiculous new rules. I sat at my desk and looked at the software icon on my screen. It looked so harmless, so corporate and bland. But he had turned it into a weapon aimed at me. Now, I was simply going to turn it around and aim it right back. The life my husband and I had built depended on my competence, and I would not let a man like him jeopardize it with his ego. My work would, as always, speak for itself. It was just going to say something he never expected. My work was just going to say something he never expected. The next 2 weeks were an exercise in perfect, meticulous obedience. I became a model employee in his new system. Every minor client question, every follow-up, every single piece of communication was logged through the software. I spent more time filling out digital forms than actually solving problems, but my activity metrics looked fantastic. I could feel his smug satisfaction every time he walked past my desk. He would glance at my screen, see the familiar interface of his pet project, and give a slight, approving nod. He thought he had broken me, that he had successfully forced me into his new world of inefficient, process-driven nonsense. He had no idea I was not breaking. I was building. I was patiently laying the stones of his own trap. Then, 2 weeks later, the email I had been waiting for landed in my inbox. It arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, a time when corporate emergencies always seem to strike. The subject line was just 3 words, but they were the 3 most beautiful words I had ever read. "Urgent, call me." It was Ms. Vance. My heart gave a single, steady, determined thump against my ribs. This was it. The moment had arrived. The professional in me, the part that had been honed over a decade of client service, screamed to just pick up the phone. It was an instinct, a muscle memory, but I forced it down. Patience, meticulousness. I had a new process to follow. Ignoring the blinking cursor in my email reply window, I moved my mouse and clicked on the icon for his horrible software. As expected, it took nearly 3 full minutes just to load, the little spinning circle a perfect symbol of its uselessness. With painstaking care, I created a new task. I titled it, "Urgent Call Request from Ms. Vance." I filled in every required field. I assigned it the highest priority level the system would allow. Then, I moved to the comments section, the only place for actual communication. I typed my reply slowly and deliberately. "Of course, Ms. Vance. Please use the scheduling link within this task to book a time on my calendar. I look forward to connecting with you." Finally, I went back to my email. My fingers flew across the keyboard as I composed a new message to her, the picture of a helpful and compliant employee. "Dear Ms. Vance, per a new mandatory company policy, I am required to move our conversation to our new client portal. I have created a task for your request, and you can view my full reply and schedule our call via this link." I attached the hyperlink to the task I had just created. I read the email over twice to ensure it was perfectly polite and perfectly unhelpful. I took one final, deep breath, held it for a beat, and hit send. The trap was set. It took less than an hour. The wait was tense, but my focus never wavered. My desk phone rang, its shrill tone cutting through the office hum. I looked at the caller ID and saw the name of our company's chief executive officer. My stomach fluttered for a second, a brief jolt of adrenaline, before the cold calm took over again. I had prepared for this. I answered on the second ring. "Riley speaking." He didn't waste time with pleasantries. His voice was a low growl of pure frustration. "Riley, what the hell is going on? I just got off the phone with a livid Ms. Vance. She says you're refusing to help her with an urgent problem and are sending her bureaucratic links. What is this?" I kept my voice calm and even, the model of professionalism under pressure. "Sir, I apologize for Ms. Vance's frustration. I was simply following a direct and explicit order from my manager." I paused for a beat, letting the statement hang in the air. His exact words to me were, "You will use the new software for all client communication. No more emails. If it is not in the software, it did not happen." I was ensuring my actions were properly documented according to the new protocol. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. It stretched for 5, then 10 seconds. I could almost hear him processing the sheer, unadulterated stupidity of the rule he had just heard. The silence was my victory. When he finally spoke, the anger in his voice was gone, replaced by a weary command. "Call her! Now, handle it!" The line went dead. I immediately picked up the phone and dialed Ms. Vance, solving her urgent problem in less than 5 minutes. An hour after that, an email landed in every single employee's inbox, sent from the CEO himself. The subject line read, "Our commitment to clients." The body of the email was short and brutally to the point. "Effective immediately, All employees are empowered to use whatever communication method is best and most efficient for the client. Our relationships are our highest priority. There are no exceptions. I leaned back in my chair and glanced over at my manager's glass-walled office. He was just sitting there, motionless, staring at his computer screen. His face, usually flushed with arrogance, was completely pale. The swagger was gone, replaced by the slack-jawed look of a man who had just been publicly, totally, and utterly overruled. He had been publicly, totally, and utterly overruled. In the quiet that followed the CEO's email, you could feel the entire power dynamic of our office shift. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was a silent, collective understanding that the emperor had no clothes. His authority, built on a foundation of buzzwords and intimidation, had been shattered by a single, clear message from the top. He didn't leave his office for the rest of the day. For the next few weeks, he was a ghost haunting the hallways. His arrogant swagger was gone, replaced by a tense, hunched posture. People who once scrambled for his attention now found reasons to be busy when he walked by. His meetings were sparsely attended, his directives met with polite but noncommittal responses. His control was gone, and without it, he was nothing. 6 months later, a lot has changed. My old manager is gone. About a month after the incident, he was moved to a newly created special projects role, a classic corporate exile. He had a fancy title but no team to manage and no real responsibilities. He was a king without a kingdom. He quietly resigned a few weeks after that, his departure announced in a brief, forgettable email. With his influence gone, his disastrous software project was the next to fall. It was scrapped almost overnight, much to the relief of the entire company and all our clients. Then, something happened that I never would have expected. I was called into a meeting with the chief executive officer and the head of technology. They didn't just want a report on what went wrong, they wanted my help to select its replacement. For the first time, I felt like my years of experience were truly being valued. I wasn't just an employee following orders, I was a trusted expert whose opinion mattered. I helped them choose a system that was simple, efficient, and designed to support our work, not obstruct it. It was a tool, not a cage. Shortly after, I was promoted to Director of Client Relations. It was a new position created just for me. My first official act was to draft our department's guiding principles. The first and most important rule was a direct echo of the CEO's email. Do what's right for the client always. Use the most effective and direct method possible to solve their problems. My work life now is peaceful and productive. The low-grade battle that consumed my days is gone, replaced by a sense of shared purpose. My team knows that I trust them to make good decisions, and in return, they do incredible work. We are focused on building relationships and solving problems, the very things I have always believed in. My relationship with Ms. Vance is stronger than ever. We spoke on the phone last week, and after we handled her business, she laughed and said, "Just make sure you don't send me to a portal." We both laughed. The portal incident, as she calls it, has become our inside joke, a reminder of a battle fought and won. Every night, I go home to my husband feeling not just successful, but respected. The stability I work so hard to provide feels more secure than ever, built not on blind obedience, but on proven competence. I learned a valuable lesson from all of this. I had always believed in doing good work and letting it speak for itself, and I still do. But I also learned that sometimes the chain of command is broken. Sometimes the person giving the orders is wrong. And in those moments, the best way to fight a stupid rule is not to break it, but to follow it so perfectly, so meticulously, that it collapses under its own weight and breaks itself.